Howard Storm here, and I hope you all are well. My life was irrevocably altered on June 1, 1985, when I experienced a near-death experience. The real die-hard atheist. I was before my near-death experience. It was at that time that I was 38 years old, a professor at a university, and utterly preoccupied with my own life and work. I had just wrapped up a 3-week art tour with a class of university students on June 1, 1985. While attempting to persuade the students to visit an alternate museum at 11 in the morning in the hotel room, I felt the worst excruciating agony of my life and slumped to the floor. Within 10 minutes of my wife's call to the hotel desk, someone was on their way to summon an ambulance. He informed me that I needed surgery within the hour due to a perforation of the duodenum, a tiny portion of the stomach, or else I would not survive. I was transported to the surgical hospital on a trolley after an ambulance was summoned, which was located several streets away. I went to the hospital to help the general population, but they transferred me to the operating room instead. I was assigned a room upon arrival at the unit. For the following 10 hours, the surgical hospital did not have a surgeon on staff. No one ever prescribed me any kind of pain medication, and I never even made it to the doctor's office. Oh, I just had this near-death experience because it was like some kind of drug trip. That's one of the things that annoys me to no end. After pleading, screaming, and begging for a pain reliever for 10 hours straight, no one would give it to me. A nurse entered the room and apologized, but they couldn't find a doctor. They promised to try again on Sunday. Upon hearing it, I was extremely frail and had severe breathing difficulties for quite some time. As a result, I devoted every ounce of my being to the process of inhaling and exhaling air. So I informed my wife, "It's time for us to say goodbye," as the nurse departed the room. Express your affection to my parents, my children, and everyone else in my life. This was the end of an era, and she began to cry as I'd never seen anyone cry before. Went unconscious after closing my eyes and not breathing as she sobbed on the chair. When I opened my eyes, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of joy, the most overwhelming sense of joy I had ever experienced. In a word, I was overjoyed, thrilled, astounded, astonished, and confused. The bright side, though, was that I had a reality check with my body and felt great. All of my senses, including taste, sight, smell, and touch, were more acute than they had ever been before. Even though I stood there yelling and screaming at my wife, she didn't respond to my attempts at communication because she couldn't see or hear me. I glanced across at my generous French roommate, but he paid me no mind. I felt a mix of wrath and confusion. My worst nightmare came true when I discovered the lifeless body in the bed. To all appearances, it was me, even though I was standing next to the corpse and something that appeared to be me on the bed. I still would not admit that it was really me. But no, that is definitely not who I am. Outside the room, I could hear people yelling, "Howard, Howard, come, hurry, we've got to go, we've got to go." I crossed to the room's entrance and saw a cluster of people in the shadowy corridor. Since they were standing outside the room's light source, they were once again cast into the shadows. There were perhaps 8 of them, a mix of male and female grown-ups. I proclaimed, "I require medical attention. Am ill. My doctor has ordered surgery for me." "We are well acquainted with you," they responded. "It's finally time for you to join us. We've been patiently waiting for you." I stepped out of the room and embarked on a lengthy journey with them, pretending they were hospital personnel coming to take me to the doctor. Not long into the trip, I noticed that there were no railings, no stairs, no walls, and no ceiling. It became increasingly clear to me as we continued our drive that the light was fading. Additionally, the individuals accompanying me ceased behaving in a professional manner and resorted to making obscene, insulting comments toward me. It was becoming somewhat unsettling. They aren't pleasant and just want to push their will on me. At last, we arrived at a location that was totally black, with not a single light source. Decided to separate from them. There were a lot more people in the group now. Hundreds, maybe even thousands. My response was, I'm not going to go any further. They pointed out, you have to go. You're not there yet. You've got further to go. Since I was completely confused about my location and the best route to return, my statement, I'm going back, was an act of deception. They began to shove and push me when I stopped moving. After I resisted by striking, punching, and kicking, they are now returning the favor. Their goal was to dismember me, and they succeeded. However, after they finished working, and I lay there on the ground like roadkill, I was still conscious and wondering, and I asked myself, why? Could you tell me what I am looking at? Am I even here? What gave me the willies? Who on earth are these awful individuals? It was hopeless. Suddenly, an external voice told me to pray to God. Given my lack of faith, I found the idea to be absurd, abolish prayer. However, the voice instructed to pray to God. I have no idea what to pray for. I thought to myself, since I was a little kid, haven't prayed. What am I supposed to say? A voice that seemed almost booming commanded, pray to God. Okay, I thought to myself, we studied prayers in Sunday school when I was a little girl. Because that is what kids learn about prayer, I'm attempting to recall some information that I had previously committed to memory. You recite passages from memory, such as the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalm. Therefore, the Lord's Prayer and the opening lines of Psalm 23 were all that I could recall. Not because I had any faith in God, but because this voice instructed me to. I spoke them out loud. The individuals in my immediate vicinity become exceedingly irate and began spewing the most vile, disgusting language. They're about to make things considerably worse for me, and I've heard it all my life, that nobody listens to me, that there is no God, and that I should just stop crying. You know what? Finally got a response from these folks after all this time. Although my reaction was negative, took a symbolic punch in the gut by praying. As a result, I began to make up prayers. My real prayer was quite nasty, something along the lines of God is going to, expletive, get you. I've never shared it with anyone because of how crude it was. I prayed those things with all my heart, and I was utilizing God as a punching bag. There was an increase in their yelling at me to cease mentioning God as I continued to do so. What matters most, though, is that they repeatedly retreated into darkness as a result of their intolerance of any reference to God. They eventually abandoned me, and I remained there for what seemed like an eternity. I asked myself, why am I here? As I reflected on my life at that moment, when I was 38 years old, I believed I was a divine blessing for humanity. In my naivete, I believed I was a major player. Finally, I understood that I was nothing. My whole self-perception collapsed under the weight of my own inflated ego, and I fell into a pit of pitiless sorrow. Suddenly, a recollection flooded my mind. Sunday school, when I was a little kid, singing Jesus Loves Me. If I were a kid again, I'd totally sing this song at Sunday school. The most crucial thing was that I could relive the emotions I had felt when I was a kid in my memory. It was almost as if I liked this Jesus guy, who was like Superman. I had faith in him when I was a little child, and he would answer my prayers and things like that. Therefore, I confessed, Jesus, I have no idea whether you exist or not. Your level of concern for me is unclear to me. My prayer may go unheard by you. Jesus, I beg you to rescue me. What I really meant when I said, save me, was to be rescued and removed from this location. Out of the blackness, a minuscule light, like a star, emerged, shocking me. In addition, it grew incredibly brilliant and rapidly passed directly in front of me. The white light was unbelievably intense, 10 times brighter than the sun. Hands and arms sprang out of it. All that blood and guts just kind of melted away as his fingers brushed across my flesh, and I felt whole again. In a powerful embrace, he drew me close to him, his hands going behind my back as he lifted me up. Plus, I sobbed uncontrollably, which was a first for me as an adult. With my face pressed against his chest, I sobbed uncontrollably, and he caressed my back in the way a parent would their own child. Plus, it was the most joyous and loving event of my life. Not only did he adore me, but he wanted and cared for me too. My feet are suddenly no longer on the earth as I revel in that immense affection. We are ascending at a rapid pace. We're making tremendous progress, and I'm attempting to collect myself as I've been crying uncontrollably. By the time I've gathered enough, I glance up at the direction we're going. Initially, I mistake it for a vast galaxy of stars, but upon closer inspection, I see that each star is pulsating in its own unique direction. They're not stars, but rather other celestial entities. I keep thinking, he's made a terrible mistake. As we approach them, I don't belong here. I'm a piece of trash, I thought to myself, my feelings being overwhelmed by filth. At that point, we stepped out of this dimension of luminous creatures and light, and he initiated our first telepathic communication. "We don't mess up," he assured them. "You are truly at home here." I considered asking, "How do you know what I was thinking?" but refrained from doing so. Then he said, "I know everything you've ever thought." I thought to myself, "Oh, this is really bad because I've thought a lot of things that I don't want you to know." After he laughed, we started talking. As corny as it sounds, he's the coolest dude ever. He is laid back, cool, and easy to talk to. Jesus is my best buddy. Thus I refer to him as such. Furthermore, he is my friend and my Lord and Savior as well as King of Kings. His voice was filled with melody as he declared, "I've got some people I want you to meet." The beings I call angels appeared to him and told him, "Now, they've recorded your life, and they want to show you your life." As a result, we reviewed my life's events in chronological sequence during my life review. It sort of went downhill as I entered my teenage years and into adulthood. Realized how much of a spoiled brat I had grown into, and how much pain my egotism had brought to my loved ones. Simply put, I was not the kind of person they were hoping to teach me to be. Kind and caring person. For me, the most important thing was that I was a successful person. What seemed like a sign of vulnerability was the loving and caring element. I always fancied myself the most formidable forest beast, because I believed it was the mark of a true man. I sought to instill fear in others. You exert your authority through threats and intimidation, and I was well aware that my actions were grievous to Jesus and the angels. "Do you have any questions?" Jesus asked at the end of the sermon. My response was, "I've got a million questions." He instructed them to ask all your questions. So I bombarded him with questions, and he patiently, graciously, and comprehensively responded to every one. After that, he broke the bad news to me. Even though I vehemently opposed returning to this reality, I knew I had no choice. His rationality, kindness, and tolerance helped me overcome my objections to returning here, even though I longed to go to heaven. A nurse walked into the room the second I returned, plunging me headfirst back into my physical self and the agony it had caused. Half an hour after her earlier visit, the time had changed to 9:00 in the evening. "Doctors have arrived," she announced. "I will get you ready for surgery." The following morning, at 10:00, I underwent surgery. On waking up from my surgery, I was aware that the defining moment of my life had transpired. It was going to be necessary for me to start over. After 30 years of work, I must now dismantle this character and construct an entirely new one. Constructing a new identity has been my primary focus since 1985. I have accomplished this via putting my faith in Jesus Christ, whom I confess to be the Son of God. 2,000 years ago, he demonstrated the best and brightest of human potential by being both fully human and entirely divine. That concludes my life's narrative.